Brother, what should you really be doing in your 20s? Because let's be honest, most guys in their 20s are lost, and that's why I made a video yesterday telling you what you should not do in your 20s. So mind you, for context, for new viewers, I'm currently 28, and I've seen way too many guys in their late 20s and their early 30s. They regret their lives for the simple actions they could have taken or not taken in their 20s. So in this video, my hope is to fix your mindset around what your 20s is supposed to be. It's not about traveling the world or making X amount of money, but it's about finding out who you are. So let's first of all start with the lies that go around in your 20s. The first lie is, bro, you have time. Bro, in your 20s, you have time and energy. That time and energy is the only thing you're supposed to invest so that you can acquire knowledge and money. Not the other way around. A lot of guys think, oh, because you have time and energy, you should waste it on useless things like partying, drinking, chasing women. No, that's time and energy, if wisely invested. You see, one thing about being a man, right? One thing about being a man is it's either you have it or you don't. It's either you invested your time and energy wisely or you did not. And guess what? The guys who invested their time and energy wisely are the guys who have softer lives moving forward. So if you look at whenever people talk, women talk about these men, that they are mostly referring to the men who have invested their time and money wisely. And it mostly happens in their 20s, right? Because let's be honest, right? 20s is a time where you feel like you have less responsibilities. That is because you are supposed to invest it wisely. The older you grow, the more responsibilities you begin to adapt for yourself. So see your 20s to be a foundation for mostly your entire life. It's in your 20s you begin to form the habits that really take you through life. You mean you're small, you're growing habits right or right. You're small, you don't know what you're doing. But when you begin to enter your 20s, the world begins to treat you as a man. In short, no, the moment you cross 18, the world does not give two fucks about you. If they say save the children, if you're 18, nobody is saving you. Nobody is saving jack shit. But in short, when there's a war, they're throwing into the army as soon as possible. So you got to realize that your 20s is actually the foundation for your entire life. But one benefit of a man is you can only pick up your life in 30 or 40, but why wait? If you can pick up your life right now, why wait your 30s and 40s? Won't you want to have family? So again, your 20s, that time and money you have is for you is to help you experiment. Because let's be honest, I have experimented with a lot of things. I have seen quite an amount of failure, but I'm grateful for the fact that at least I kept that experiment going. Your 20s, you're supposed to have curiosity, because most people in their 20s, right? Most people in their 20s, some of them just have like a job, and from that job, that is the end of their life, right? They lock themselves into a pattern of home, work, homework, maybe a few friends. And before you know it, years go by, and before you know it, decades go by. They're in their 30s and they kind of realize that they are underskilled for the market. So one thing you should do is use your 20s to experiment on what works for you. That is your time for you to take risk as a man. That's the time for you to fix your mindset, to take certain actions that will basically propel you towards growth. And in your 20s, that's when you should actually leave your comfort zone. Because there are way too many guys in their 20s right now living with their parents, right? And I'm grateful for the fact that I was able to leave my father's house at the age of 23. And it's not a way of bragging, it's a way of blessing, to remind myself that I'm basically living by these principles. I'm living with the principle of me fixing my life and me becoming better. Again, your 20s is supposed to be the age of you changing your story. Now, this is why this is very important is all of the stories you had before your 20s, those stories were stories that society put in your head, the beliefs, the ideas society puts in your head. And in your 20s, if you really want to take your life serious, your 20s should be a time where you're beginning to change the narrative of what they put in your head. A typical example is go to school, get a degree, get a job, build a family. Sorry, go to school, get a degree, get a job, get married, die further, then get buried by 65. But to be very frank, your life is different, right? You have your own unique path. That is why the first thing I'll tell you to do in your 20s is find your unique path. Why I use that word unique path is everyone's path is different. I'm saying this because I used to think that the content I watch online applies to every single body on the internet, but I came to realize that we have nuances. That yes, they apply for most people, but every rule has exceptions. One thing I think I've learned in my entire life is I don't always need people to get things done. My point is, before I start any venture, I always wanted a team. I always wanted, keyword there is wanted, felt like I needed, right? And that made me go into ventures with people who I would say did not really perform as I expected. Heck, I would say I've had a lot of failed projects. And it made me, I had to realize recently that, because I just turned 28, I had to realize that most of my best projects are projects I did alone, right? Or at least I did it with people who were already either at my level or better than me. So what that means is, if I'm to get partners, I should do it alone. And if partners come my way, then I should actually bring them on board if they are up to the task. Because that idea of always wanting to have partners, because I got the idea from listening to entrepreneurs talking about having a partner, having a team, forcing myself to have partners and team. And now my mindset has changed. I'm saying this because you are to build your own unique path. I will say some things in this video which you might say, no, in my own story is different, right? But again, I'm talking about principles here. Your life might start to be the exception. So again, your path, your purpose, right? Why were you born? Because let's be honest, most men out there don't know why they are born. And when you don't know why you are born, guess what? It's easy for you to fall for distractions. Fine. And your vision, what are you working towards? Even all religions agree with one thing, that if you don't have a vision, you are bound to perish. If you don't have a vision, you are lost as a human being because you don't have a direction. And guess what happens? When you don't have a direction, you begin to drift in life. You begin to feel a victim, right? And you begin to fall into addiction, into vices, right? If you don't have a vision you're going towards, if you don't have a mission, if you don't want something doing, guess what? Your life is boring. That's why I always tell people that there's a reason people like James Bond. He's always on a mission. And yes, he enjoys himself to be on that mission. And that's why I tell myself that I'm currently becoming a realistic James Bond. That's why I vlog every day about becoming him, creating content and things like this, because I am finding my own path. Again, so this is where you begin to set goals for yourself, because without goals, your mind begins to drift to directions that you don't even want to be. Without goals. That's why if you look at people who are in their early 20s, right, who still live with their parents, what goals do they have? I remember I had this guy I was talking to, and then this is even where I feel like your comfort zone is very dangerous. He's 28, right? And I asked him, why haven't you left your parents' house? He says, well, my parents have an extra room. So forth. He was living with his girlfriend in his parents' house. And I'm like, how free are you when you say you're living with your parents' house? He's like, well, not so free. How powerful do you feel when you're living in your parents' house? He says, well, not so powerful, because subconsciously, that space does not belong to him. That space does not belong to him. Now, that idea of being living your comfort zone, when you're now he's approaching his 30s, I can tell you for a fact that it's very difficult for him to experiment. And he knows this deep down. This is why I say again, one thing you get to realize that in your 20s, you should be a guy who takes action. Then in your 20s, one other important thing is, okay, so when you have a path, you begin to set goals. Those goals you set, you begin to make you pick on the right set of skills that you need. Because like I said, your path is unique, right? I can tell you, I made a video recently on the skills every man needs to master. But the last skill is knowing the remaining skills that you need. Some people need negotiation skills, some people need persuasion skills, but yes, some skills are completely unnegotiable. So yes, when you have your goal, that is why you should not build any skill yet until you have a goal. You want your goal decides your direction in life, right? The skills you learn give you speed, but your goals give you a fucking direction. If you don't have the goals, your direction ain't coming shit. So next thing I'll say is important in your 20s is finding the right people, being surrounded by the right people. You see, it's easy for you to fall for addiction, vices, when you have the wrong set of people. When you have people who don't have a direction, guess what? You do not have a direction. It's easy for the blind to lead the blind. There's a story by El Nightingale that still gets me to today, right? And just to summarize it, a man is always passing in front of a clock store and always setting his watch based on what he sees at the shop, right? And then every morning, and this guy comes out, the owner of the store comes out and says, every morning I see you here setting your clock here. Why do you keep resetting your clock? He says because each time he goes to work, he has to blow the quitting whistle. What that means is he adjusts his clock to what he sees at the office. But because of his passing a clock store, he thinks that the man setting the clock has the right time. But the man setting the clock has been setting his time based on that quitting whistle. So it's like leading the blind. And that's why I tell you that you need to, once in a while, raise your head up and realize that most people don't really know what they are doing. Most people are just born into this earth and they just try not to do anything different, right? They tend to live that path that has been laid by the matrix. go to school, like I said, go to school, get a degree, die, get a job, die, get married. These days, marriage is out of sight for most guys. And that I don't want that to be the case for you if you stick to the end of this video. Die, then before you know it, they're probably somewhere else. Then again, when I say find the brotherhood, it's the right people. So when I say brotherhood and mentors, brotherhoods are guys, I would say brotherhood are guys in your age brackets, either slightly above you, 25, 35, your age brackets basically. While mentors are guys who are already ahead of you. And I would always say this thing that your mentors, why you need mentors? Because mentors are not there for financial purposes alone, because whenever people speak about mentors, it must make you feel like it's one transactional thing, it must be money involved. It doesn't always have to be money involved. Mentor is, okay, I had this guy, right, who just got married. Again, people who shit about marriages or the red pill space don't realize that if you really want to get married, surround yourself with people who are already married, who already have successful families, because your eyes will begin to observe patterns. So this guy just got married, very decent guy, is rich and everything. Yeah, he's financially stable, or put it that way, financially buoyant. And then he asked me, why don't I have a girlfriend? And he thought I was like, this was when I was 23. He's like, because we go to the same gym. And mind you, when I was 23, I was the youngest in my gym. And then he was like, a lot of girls at that gym are single and they're looking for guys, right? And I told him about, bro, I don't think I'm financially there yet. That's my excuse. And he says, do you think you need money to talk to women? What makes you think that after you get your money in your 30s, you'll be comfortable with women? How do you see yourself in your 30s, rich, but afraid to talk to women? Because that's what's leading to men overcompensating with money to talk to women. Oh, I don't feel enough. I don't feel secure in my abilities. Let me use money as a tool to get her to like me already. That should completely change my mindset. That's the power of having mentors. That is the power there of having mentors. And the brotherhood, again, brotherhood will always hold you accountable to your goals, your vision, your purpose. If you have the right set of friends, you guys will hold yourself, not by calling yourself, the call-outs can happen time to time, but it's more like when you are off your purpose and the rest are on their purpose, automatically it sinks in your head that something is not right somewhere. But for most people, because of they have no direction, right, their brain feels like they are making the right choices. So whether I would like it or not, we all conform. Whether I would like it or not, we all conform. The smart people conform, but they conform. Again, that's why the people who don't conform actually are people who don't have friends. But you have friends, you would always conform. It's because you want to keep them as friends. And because you want to keep them as friends, you conform to their ideas. You can either conform to the ideas of being on your purpose or conform to the ideas of distraction. Another thing is, in your 20s, be fucking obsessed with knowledge. The reason you should be obsessed with knowledge, precisely in these days, we live in an age of misinformation. It's so crazy how the most important diet is still a question that is under debate today. Do you know how crazy that question is? What is the most important diet? Until today, we still cannot come up with the ideas of what the most important diet is. That's how much misinformation is out there. So what that means is you're going to have to suck up information from different sources, right? Again, and this again will basically help you. So read books, listen to podcasts, because whether you like it or not, if you don't make your learning intentional, again, school learning, whatever you learned in school was a curriculum set by people who are trying to make you obedient workers, literally speaking, in any country, right? But when you begin to read for yourself, when you begin to read for your understanding, it's a different ballgame. Because you yourself, you begin to observe patterns all around the world. Again, the content you consume, the knowledge you acquire, boils down to the goals that you set, right? Again, I tell you to acquire as much knowledge as possible, because at first, you begin to see that what you know is bullshit. And over time, your study begins to become much more condensed and much more directed. So I think coming very, 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 very soon, I'll be dissecting Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill with one of my guys, Dante. So it's going to be like a podcast episode. No matter what, don't miss it. It's going to be a very long episode. Probably going to be like, all our episodes are like average of 3-4 hours long. Two or like 3 hours long or 4. Then when you acquire a lot of knowledge, all of a sudden you begin to have what is called first principles thinking, right? First principles thinking is the thinking that, you know, when I tell you that if you take knowledge from one particular field, you can basically apply it in other areas of your life. That's because you have understood principles. You see, there's a reason why if you basically look at people talking, right? People argue based on what is called practices. When you're creating content, should you niche down, should you not niche down? But what a principle is are you gathering the audience? What do you and the audience want? and then find a way to negotiate it. That's a principle. Well, a principle is be authentic and you will find your crowd. Be authentic, you will find your audience. That's a principle. But practice is, okay, for me to be authentic, I need to vlog. For me to be authentic, I need to have a niche. Well, guess what? A principle is as you just do it, you will figure it out along the way. But if you're not doing jack shit and just doing research, you will not figure out jack shit. Can you see what principles are? Because principles will get you to your goal regardless of the practices. So most people argue on practices, but if you begin to consume as much information, you begin to connect dots in your head, figure out what first principle thinking is, and the more you get to understand this, the better for you. Again, in your 20s should be your period for massive self-improvement.